Is even here? No? Okay. Okay. There's even Jacobs on my program. Please give her a round of applause. Ahuna.
Yes.
Ah. Just introduce yourself.
Your Excellency, Madam Future President of Botswana. Dear friends of the global community, as United Nations Assistant Secretary General and Director of UNDP's Regional Bureau for Africa, here's what keeps me up at night. We have millions of unemployed youth on our continent. We have millions of ideas and potential entrepreneurs who just need a chance to succeed. For those who have tried to go into business, you will know how hard this is. Africa has nearly 30,000 active startups, entrepreneurs. We receive less than 1% of global venture capital. In that 1%, young women building businesses receive just about 5% of the 1%. But here's what gets me out of bed every morning. An initiative called Timbuktu, powered by UNDP, which says the time to look for jobs that are non-existent is over. It is time for African youth to be enabled to create jobs. We are given the chance for a student in Malawi designing clean energy solutions for rural communities. A fashion tech innovator at the University of Johannesburg addressing gender-based violence through technology. We're supporting a fintech founder in Lagos who is connecting farmers to markets through mobile money to start a business that will not only survive, but create opportunities for others. Degrees or not, you can succeed through Timbuktu. You're not succeeding for self, you're succeeding for communities. Our young people, ladies and gentlemen, are solving for the poor and disadvantaged. Africa's young people are not waiting for permission to build the future. The question is, will our systems finally rise to meet their ambition? That's why we built Timbuktu. Timbuktu connects 4 critical pieces that have either been missing or existed separately. The first, through our university innovation centers, which give students spaces to further their ideas into products for the markets. We have launched in 15 countries across Africa, including here in South Africa, the University of Johannesburg, and we commit to install these innovation centers in every African country. Second, we have created Pan-African thematic hubs, such as FinTech in Lagos, Green Tech in Nairobi, Creatives Hub here in South Africa in Cape Town. For the Creatives Hub, we had 400 applications from 30 countries before we even opened the doors. And I can tell you, last night, my heart warmed when Kind Arts, a multidisciplinary artist and filmmaker who is part of our program, told us that her profit rose by 43% after she received support from this program. The third is fixing the rules that block young people. Timbuktu works with governments and policymakers to make the laws and paperwork easier so that good ideas don't die in broken regulatory systems. If we get this right, ladies and gentlemen, we will impact more than 100 million livelihoods. The fourth is channeling catalytic capital, money for early stage risk capital businesses. Different partners are putting money together in a fund to help startups. And we're targeting, our ambition is to raise at least $1 billion in early stage catalytic fund. UNDP and its partners, including governments, by the way, have already dispersed over $40 million into this space just in the first year of execution. This is why South Africa has recognized Timbuktu as a G20 legacy project, because it's designed to outlast presidencies and budget cycles. It's embedded in universities, anchored by investors, strengthened through policy reform, sustained by a dedicated foundation. It's built to scale. The ambition is to support 10,000 enterprises, scale 1,000 of them to become gazelles and unicorns across borders in Africa and impact 100 million lives. But to reach that ambition, we need the G20 muscle. We need governments, philanthropies, we need DFIs, IFIs, and we need private sector to invest, not just as donors, but as partners in building new markets. Because when you invest in Timbuktu, you are backing the next generation of companies that will shape African economies and global industries. Then this presidency will be remembered not for the promises made, but for what was built. A continental pathway that turned African ingenuity into economic transformation. The opportunity is here, ladies and gentlemen. The talent in Africa is ready. So let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As you may have seen, everyone that has come here is women. I think the G20 Social Summit Secretariat has done well. Most of the programs that are alluded here really speaks to women and youth. And those are not just the future, but also the present. Ladies and gentlemen, let me call the next speaker, and I call upon Amohelang Mashele to talk about the Global Leadership Network, Partnership for Prosperity, a public-private partnership health accelerator. Over to you.
Co-conveners, excellencies and distinguished guests, friends in civil societies, but most importantly, women, children, and adolescents all over the world. Good day. My name is Amohelang Mashele, the first female president of the Nelson Mandela Children's Parliament, representing millions of children across South Africa. As a young leader, I feel sad when I see the state of children and adolescents' health today. As I grow up to be a young woman, I worry that mental health remains one of the biggest challenges for adolescents, and access to essential health services, including sexual and reproductive health and rights, is limited or even denied. Adding to these problems is the devastating withdrawals in official development assistance, which have left too many community organizations that protect women's, children's, and adolescents' health and rights without money. Some have closed down, and many are unable to do the good work that they were doing. Health is a human right. We want world leaders, and all of us here to address these issues if we are going to achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and the 2063 Agenda, the Africa we want. It is for this reason that I stand here as the first female president of the Nelson Mandela Children's Parliament, representing several constituencies such as the Children 20, Youth 20, Women's 20, and Children's sector to echo our endorsement of the Global Leaders Network for Women, Children's and Adolescents' Health, chaired by President Ramaphosa, and we call on the Global Leaders Network and advance its critical work towards the elimination of maternal mortality, neonatal mortality, and adolescent mortality. We welcome the renewed commitment of the Global Leaders Network on the margins of the 18th United Nations General Assembly, in particular, the commitment of the Global Leaders Network and the African Leaders Malaria Alliance, chaired by President Duma Gideon Boko of Botswana, to collaborate and establish a global health gap financing mechanism where women, children, and adolescents will be the main beneficiaries. The gap financing mechanism will be a gift to the world from the Global South. It will draw from $1 trillion in diaspora remittance as well as from the private sector. Community health workers, civilians, sexual reproductive health, health rights, and elimination of AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis will be the main focus of the fund. It will be housed in a financial institution in the Global South. We congratulate the Global Leaders Network and the African Leaders Malaria Alliance on this visionary step and declare this as a legacy project of the G20 Social Summit that must be implemented with extreme urgency. We call on G20 development partners, the private sector, and the global diaspora to champion and support Global Leaders Network and African Leaders Malaria Alliance as they catalyze equitable health financing and resilience. And to all children present in the world, I say Happy World Children's Day. I thank you. Ke a leboga. Thank you. Siyabonga.
Thank you so much, Amohelang. Yet again, another woman, and not just a woman, but a child, a young woman who is the present, not just the future. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to move ahead. I'm going to call on Boitumelo Musako, who's going to talk about the DBSA, CEO DBSA DLAB program, empower youth and communities through inclusive, sustainable, social infrastructure and opportunity pathways. Boitumelo.
Good morning. I am not Boitumelo. She's yet to come to the stage. My name is Lebogang Seperepere. Let me say, as Africa, we are wealthy. We have seen the young women that are here. So we are there. Sports for development through the development laboratories. As a South African contribution to the G20 Summit legacy, we wish to leverage the Development Bank of South Africa's DLABS program, which embodies the commitment to inclusive and sustainable development in the continent. This initiative delivers social infrastructure, being the community hubs that serve as a foundation for economic activity, growing and funding entrepreneurs, and creation of job opportunities for women and youth in the underserved areas. We commit to developing and financing community-based infrastructure and enhanced delivery programs that enables more communities across the sub-Saharan Africa to access the sport, income generation and economic development opportunities. This will be enabled through joining the SESLA, being Sports for Education and Sustainable Livelihoods in Africa initiative, and enhancing our strategic collaboration with our International Olympic Committee, the French Development Bank, the Lloris for Sports, Olymp Africa International Foundation, as well as Financing Common Sports Coalition. We will build the capacity of African civil society organizations to measure and understand the positive developmental impact of the integrated community through sports and economic development. And we will also develop economic infrastructure and associated programs with the first cohort that has already been trained during this G20 social summit, and ongoing training development initiatives leading to the 2026 Dakar Youth Olympic Games, the first ever Olympic event that is held on the African soil. Through these sustainable development initiatives, we seek to reinforce the voice of Africa and contribute meaningfully to the G20's shared legacy for sustainability, equality, and shared prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lebohang. Again, a good last round of applause, Kolisa. I didn't feel that one. The last speaker on our program for legacy projects is David Makura, who's going to talk about UNDP, USF, and DBSA, Pan-African Sovereignty Wealth Funds Initiative, establishing a regional sovereign wealth funds to stabilize economies, invest in sustainable development. David Makura. Another change. A round of applause, please.
Good morning. Dumelang. Lekai. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Bitumelo Mosako, and I serve as the Chief Executive Officer for the Development Bank of Southern Africa. I'm going to be talking about Mula Chelete. Africa needs about $1.3 trillion every year to meet the pressing needs of its citizens. Just to build and maintain infrastructure like roads, bridges, dams, supply energy, Africa needs to spend about $181 to $221 billion every year. Given Africa's rising youth population, nearly 420 million youth aged between 15 and 35 years, 1/3 are unemployed and discouraged, which undermines Africa's human capital potential. Africa is also faced with high debt levels, which have reached over $1 trillion and continue to rise, which places a bottleneck on Africa's development. Even though Africa has the second largest population by continent, and many of the world's most important natural resources come from Africa, it only produces 2% of global manufacturing output. This has to change, and the time for change is now. The proposed Pan-African Sovereign Wealth Fund offers a solution that can address some of the funding gaps that are delaying Africa's self-realization through its young population. Our young people, our advantage on this continent. This Pan-African Sovereign Wealth Fund will not replace other sovereign wealth funds that have already been developed by African countries or ones that are in process of development. It will also not replace other financing mechanisms, but will work alongside them to create a bigger pool of funding under African unity and solidarity. By mobilizing resources through the continent and spending the money on different important initiatives for each African country, the fund can attract new investments and provide long-term stability. It can enable the desired future of Africa's youth by investing in infrastructure for access to endless opportunities for our youth. It can change the future of Africa's youth by reducing the burden of future debt that every African child is burdened with. This means we will use our own African funding resources to provide, for example, reliable energy to roughly 600 million Africans that currently do not have access to reliable energy, fund and build our own roads, fund the provision of clean water to drink, provide reliable internet access for all in order to even boost entrepreneurship, especially for the youth through the digital economy, create new industries and future-fit meaningful jobs for our young women and young men. This fund will be managed by a robust governance framework anchored in civil society, public accountability, and affiliated with the African Union, African Development Finance Institutions, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, Agenda 2063, the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD. The DBSA, Open Society Foundation, and UDNP are committed to continue to bring together all stakeholders to further develop the important initiatives. African leaders and civil society must take this bold action and drive this agenda to deliver the future we want. Ladies and gentlemen, African Capital for Africa's Development. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yet again, I was told that there is another legacy project to be presented. I'm going to call on Dr. Keshen Pillay and Wayne Sharp that will talk about the expanding access to higher education through digital technology.
Greetings to all at the People's G20. We stand on all protocol observed, and we also want to acknowledge the future president of Botswana and the president of the Children's Parliament, the Nelson Mandela Children's Parliament. The University of Johannesburg and Council's legacy project expanding access to higher education in Africa through digital technology recognizes that 60% of Africa's population is under 25. Yet only 9% of our people have access to tertiary education. Using the G20 host nation as an example, South Africa alone has 815,000 school leavers, competing for just 250,000 university places. Building enough universities to meet this demand will take too long, and it will be too expensive, and our children cannot wait, and Africa's future cannot be delayed. This is why we stand firmly on the commitments made by the B20, Y20, and S20. Not on our watch will Africa be left behind. Through the Global Goals 2030 Africa Scholarship, powered by partnerships with tertiary institutions across the global north and the global south, we have already opened the doors for more than 2,000 African students at a sponsorship in excess of 235 million rands just for cohort 1. This initiative gave our students world-class online education that they would never have been able to access, narrowing the divide that held this great continent back. We want to ensure that our educators are not left behind too. Therefore, we are committed to upskilling them to leverage technology so that they can shape the young minds of Africa. We do this deliberately to capacitate African institutions of learning by building its most valuable resources, its people. This is how we prepare for 2050, when over a quarter of the world's workforce will come from Africa. We will ensure that education not only creates employment, but builds African entrepreneurs who create jobs for its people.
The G20 Social has reminded us of 4 urgent challenges: widening access and affordability, transforming curricula to affect African-centric values, integrating digital and AI technologies at scale, and strengthening employer partnerships to ensure our graduates are prepared for jobs of the future. In the next 2 years, we will launch the African Digital Higher Education Consortium, negotiate zero-rated educational data with telecom providers, pilot micro-credentials and AI literacy programs, and embed African knowledge systems into inclusive curriculum frameworks. Over the next 3 to 5 years, we will scale blended and online learning models, harmonize micro-credential frameworks across borders, expand renewable energy infrastructure to stabilize digital learning, and establish strong AI ethics and governance standards in our higher education systems. Over the next decade, we will aim for nothing less than transformative change, to move Africa from 9% tertiary enrollment towards global parity, to position our continent as a leader in inclusive, digitally enabled education and ecosystems, to ensure that higher education becomes a catalyst for innovation-led growth and lasting social stability, all fully aligned with Agenda 2063 and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Today, the Financial and International Business Association of the United States, a Global North partner, together with the Graduate Institute of Financial Sciences, the University of Johannesburg, and all other Global South partners, affirm our commitment to power digital learning, to expand financing models, and support education that unlocks opportunity across borders. Together, we can build an education ecosystem worthy of an Africa we all want and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, dignitaries, this was the last presentation. We are now at the end of the program. As I've said, we were running behind schedule. So from here on, we've been requested to move to the plenary, where we're going to then do the closing. With the powers vested in me by the core